The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, episode number 45.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, the movies, and more. Today we're discussing Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2, the Discovery Season 2 finale, which such sweet sorrow to end the Season 2, I guess. Joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father Corey.
How's it going?
Good. So before we get started, I just want to remind folks, please subscribe to the show in iTunes. Once this episode is over, there's going to be much more Secrets of Star Trek coming up, and you don't want to miss any of it. We have a lot of great content planned. There's so much Star Trek to talk about that this is something you don't want to miss. So please, if you have not done so, subscribe in iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, like Overcast or Downcast or Castro, and all the others. You can also subscribe and listen and listen to us on YouTube, where if you do, make sure to hit the bell on the next to the subscribe button to make sure you get notifications. We're at youtube.com/StarQuest is the way to find us there.
We're going to be talking about classic Trek now that the new Trek season is over.
That's right. And so much, there's plenty to talk about, as you know. So please share the podcast with your friends, your Trekkie friends, and especially those who have not been watching Discovery, but who want to talk about the Star Trek they know and remember. And we'll be talking about that too. So help us grow our community of listeners. All right. So we're picking up from where we left off last time, where the season 2 finale, we're right in the middle of the battle just about to begin between the Discovery and Enterprise and the Section 31 ships, and the Section 31 and Leland, Leland in Control, not Section 31, are trying to get the sphere data that is contained on Discovery. And on Discovery, they're trying to rebuild the time suit so they can jump the ship and the data 950 years into the future so that Control doesn't get it. That's where we are right now.
Yeah, and they spent so much time saying goodbye to everybody in the previous episode that now they have to actually do stuff.
Right.
Exactly.
So I want to start by saying it is physically impossible for Discovery and Enterprise to carry all 198 of the shuttles that are flying around the two of them. I'm a ship guy. This is one of my things I love about science fiction, space science fiction. Mm-hmm. And they're cool. These shuttles are cool. They have like the single man pocket fighters, and they have the big
pods.
Yep. And the big shuttle. I don't care how small they are. There is no way. Like I'm watching these shuttles fly out of the shuttle bays, going. It's like a clown car in there. Like, how are they doing that?
You look at the size of the shuttles inside Discovery's Bay, the full-size shuttles and their little, repair crews and every craft and everything. And all of a sudden, they're just pouring out of it. It's like, where are they coming from?
Exactly.
Well, on Discovery, they might be coming from the vast internal spaces that we see whenever they use an elevator. Right. So I don't know.
And it does have the big secondary hull. I mean, that's kind of been pointed out that there is a lot of space in Discovery that other ships don't have, but we also know that some of that space is taken up by things like engineering.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's some people say, "Oh, that's an intensely nerdy detail to get caught up on," but for me,
no,
it's
you got to set it up realistically. What we're seeing on screen does not match with what they. I mean, I understand the desire to have a huge space battle with vast numbers of ships. and that's fine if you want to do that, but you need to set it up in a believable way, and that's what they haven't done here.
They did kind of say, like some of them are those little squid spinny craft and stuff like that, little small craft that are, a little bigger than a human anyways. So that does kind of make sense. But yeah, you see these massive numbers of full-size shuttles pouring out of the back end of Enterprise. You're sitting going, what?
They're replicating him in the hangar bay as they're like the people are running onto them and flying.
If this was the Enterprise D, I would believe that, because you look at the specs for that and it's got huge hangar bays. I mean, just massive hangar bays you don't actually see on screen. But yeah, not the original NCC 1701 Enterprise.
Right. So then we have a sequence where we have Burnham and others are working quickly to replicate this time suit, which, I mean, this sequence, everything moves very quickly because we spent so much time saying goodbye last episode, like you said, Jimmy. Everything now has to move very quickly to get it all in. And so we have, as the battle is about to begin, or it begins, because there's actual fighting while they're doing this, they're down in engineering building this time suit because they left it to the last minute, and the paper's due, and the professor's waiting, or something along those lines.
And one thing that I found interesting about this is they spend all their time focusing on the hardware of the suit. And I'm going, okay, fine. What are you doing about the software? How are you programming this thing? Because I'm sure it's not hardware locked to Burnham's bioprint. That's got to be in the software. So what's the deal with the software, and why can't you just change the bio code at the software level?
This is the thing. I think like these writers and not just Star Trek, but a lot of TV fundamentally do not understand computers. They don't understand how computers work, or they don't care. They just sort of want to wave their hand at it. And this is for, like a police procedurals. This is sci-fi. I mean, everything. The one show that gets it right is Mr. Robot. That's the only show on TV that gets it always right.
But here, the suit clearly is computer driven, because when she's trying to program it where to go, she's programming it. She brings up an interface and she's punching stuff on it.
Well, I was going to say, you're talking about the computers. I can get some of the things that they'll say, like the idea of the Spear AI taking over the ship to prevent it from itself from being destroyed, preventing it from being deleted, and so on. That's completely reasonable. I mean, we see viruses that can take over our desktops to prevent them from being deleted. That is something that's a real problem right now. But then the idea, we can't have 2 copies or 3 copies or 4 copies. You have this one copy that moves around from place to place.
That actually comes into play later in this battle. I mean, the Discovery is getting its butt kicked by these Section 31 ships. I mean, it is getting hammered, and it is about to be destroyed. And I'm thinking, where's the Sphere data AI now? Like, why isn't it protecting itself? Why isn't it, jumping it or fixing things or whatever it is supposed to be doing?
Because we know that it's been moved. And of course, that comes up later in the episode. It's not in the central core of the computer, et cetera, et cetera. It's off on a laptop somewhere.
That's a fair point.
That's true. That is true. Okay. At the time I wrote that hadn't been revealed, but okay.
One thing that I found interesting just cinematically in this one is we start with a swish pan between Discovery and Enterprise, and we have that swish several times to jump us to different places, and it has a very effective feeling of urgency to it. And then later, but still early in the episode, when they're having Enterprise and Discovery talk back and forth, they start using split screen for people on the different ships. And they even, I think, have one where like Saru is in the middle of a 3-way screen split. And that's something we don't normally see on Star Trek. Normally they cut back and forth between locations. They don't do like in the movie Airplane and show us both locations at once on the screen.
Right. Or they'll have a view screen, someone on a view screen.
You'll see the screen split on a view screen where there'll be like 2 people talking on the view screen. But yeah. Not as far as an actual full screen split.
That actually brings up the point. We have not seen a whole lot of people on view screens talking like we have often seen on Star Trek. We've, apart from the holograms, which Pike does not like, we don't actually see people on screens very often. Well, we have seen a few times, but not very often, which is kind of surprising. They rather do these jump cuts or split screen, full screen things. So we have the preparing for battle. Everyone has to give their speech, all the captains, and Saru gives his, which is he quotes Sun Tzu: "Be extremely subtle, even to the point of formlessness. Be extremely mysterious, even to the point of soundlessness. Thereby you can be the director of your opponent's fate." I'm thinking, well, that's all very well and good, but what does that have to actually do with the battle?
What does it mean, and how am I supposed to implement that on a practical level? Thank you.
Exactly. I mean, maybe as the captain, as you make your decisions about what the ship should do at this moment, that's... But, like, what does that have to do with the guy who's at the communications console or the...
And also, that's good advice as you're approaching the battle. But right now you're surrounded by a whole bunch of these ships that are going to try to blast you out of the universe. You're past the point of subtleness.
Yeah, this was a eve of battle attempt at profundity that failed.
See, now if they had put that in the previous episode as they're approaching, maybe as in like an overlay to the people saying goodbye, or something like that, that would have been more effective.
But as we plan for this battle, think of these things. That's a sort of planning for the battle thing. That's not as we stand here waiting to engage the enemy.
Right. That kind of advice, to the extent it's useful, is on the strategic level, not the tactical level, which is where we are now.
So on the good side, I don't want the people to think that I'm completely negative about this. There's a lot of really good stuff in this episode. This moment where they're like, okay, Control, we outnumber you. Our 300 or 200 ships, the Discovery, Enterprise, and 198 shuttles, apparently. We outnumber you, your handful of Section 31 ships. And he's like, no, you don't. And then we have these AI drones that make up the hulls of these ship that now deploy. I thought that I like that. I thought it was kind of cool, that whole sequence.
I thought it was interesting. So in terms of the 31 fleet, we're told that it's only Leland, and he registers as a life sign for some reason.
He's a meat sack.
But
he's still a meat sack. So
yeah, well, I guess so. But then it's just him and no other life signs in all the 31 ships. And so Giorgio says they're drones, really nasty ones. I'm going, what happened to the crews? Did they kill them all?
I wouldn't put that past Control. That he did the same thing that they did to the one ship, where he basically spaced them all.
But this gets back to your only one copy of the software problem, Father. If you're capable of nano-infecting people like we've seen Control do, why don't you nano-infect these people? And then you've got, several thousand people who can interact and do stuff on the human level.
Because this is a super mega multi-processing computer made up of all the ship's computers linked together and by remote control, and I'm just making stuff up as I'm going here.
It's not that, though, because this is the reason they're able to defeat Control, is once Giorgio takes him down, all the other ships are dead in the water.
Exactly.
So yeah. Control, and this gets back to one of my pet peeves in science fiction and fantasy, is the critical failure point, where you just need to take out this one thing and it solves your entire problem, no matter how vast it is, even if there's no reason for it. And so there's even a line in there where Pike says that the other ships are getting signals from Control. Okay, so put him in a Faraday cage. And he's the critical failure point, and that makes no sense, because if I were a super intelligent AI bent on no good, I would make multiple copies of myself all over the place and other meat sausages. So you can't just take this copy of me down and foil my plan.
Well, I just, I for those who don't know, my background before I was a priest was as computers and doing computer administration, to be specific. And, I think of what Google does today. When you do a Google search, you're not hitting one server somewhere in California. They have literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of servers throughout the world that are redundant, that if one goes down, there's 10 more to back it up. And you never notice if they even have a server farm go down, like a whole, warehouse full of servers. Why couldn't Control do that? Turn every ship into a duplicate of itself that were slaved together. So when Leland goes down, all the other ships just jump right into action or keep going without.
And Star Trek already has this. It has it in the Borg that they've solved this problem, and they've recreated this in a way that doesn't really work under the rules that Star Trek itself has established. And that's sort of we can talk about that next time when we talk about our overall look back at season 2. But it sort of hints at a fundamental, I don't want to say problem, but a fundamental way of doing Star Trek that the people who are running things now that they have that I'm not a fan of. And so we could talk about that, but.
Well, I was going to say, we've talked about it before, too, where, they get science wrong because they don't have a science advisor. They get computers wrong because they don't have a computer advisor, and so on.
On the positive side, one of the things they do well frequently is dialogue and character moments. And in this episode, I really like some of the dialogue, especially from Georgiou. Just before the battle begins, when they're getting Leland on the line, Saru is preparing the bridge crew, saying there is going to be a human face, but what you're about to see is not a human. And then they bring Leland on the view screen, and Georgiou says, "Leland, we were just talking about you." And that's a great line. Unfortunately, she follows it up with a clunker, which is, "Everybody hates you. Congratulations." But I do like that one line. And then she points out to Leland, we've got over 200 ships. You've got maybe 30. And Leland is just very businesslike. He's dropped the pretense of trying to relate as a human, and he's just very businesslike. He says, basically, give me what I came for, or you're going to die. And she makes the point about, we've got 200 ships, you've got 30, and he just says, count again. And that's the moment they reveal the drones.
Right. Thousands of drones on the ships. And that's the end of the teaser, which was so a dramatic moment.
Right. And so then the battle begins. We're 9 minutes into this just over an hour-long episode, and the battle goes on for 43 minutes, which makes it the longest and most ambitious space battle in Star Trek history.
And I think this is probably one of the most impressive space battles ever on TV, and maybe even movies. I mean, it was just because it wasn't like so many Star Trek battles that were almost sterilized. They're just, these ships are these big mega ships, even like the big DS9 battles where they've got multiple huge ships and everything and fighters and everything. Nothing to this level.
Yeah, I think it's a mixed success. I mean, I enjoyed it. It would not have worked if we didn't have constant cutaways to other stuff happening. Because they've shoved so much stuff on the screen. There's no way to visually follow this. I have no clue. I mean, there's even a moment when Spock and Michael launch out of the Discovery, and Michael's trying to follow in Spock's wake, and I can't tell which shuttle is Spock's out of all the shuttles I'm seeing on the screen. The only way we know is because of her suit is tracking which shuttle it is. She's having to rely on her suit tracking. And that's the same thing for me as a viewer. I have no clue what's going on. I see explosions and things. There's no way for me to get, except here and there when they point it out, there's no way for me to get a sense of the tactics that are transpiring in front of me.
It is incredibly difficult to write and create space battles, whether big screen or small screen. And so
one group that did it well, though, was Ronald Moore in Battlestar Galactica. And they actually had a low-tech way of setting the audience up for it. They'd show us models, miniatures on a tabletop and game out the battle we're about to see before we see it. And that way we can tell what's going on and how everything is visually related to each other once the battle starts.
Well, and the fact is, once the battle starts, the tactics are important, but it's ultimately... it's going to be chaos.
It's background. It's really background for everything else that's going on. The fact is, like, one of the things that I had to set aside was this impatience I had for characters like Michael and Spock sitting there agonizing with each other about what's the moment, what we should say to each other to say goodbye. And I'm like, there are people dying. Stop.
I know. Yeah.
Stop emoting. And I'm just like, you know what? it's going to happen. The ships are going to survive. The whole thing is going to go on. I have to put my outside the show brain into this, and you break the fourth wall and say they're going to take as long as they take. Everything's going to be okay. You know what I mean? It's not. It's just you got to deal with it.
You kind of got to go with it to some extent, but I found it annoying also because it's not realistic to how people would behave in this situation. They would be running. Michael would not have this dramatic looking at the suit moment before she puts it on. She would be scrambling to get into it. And then they're standing there emoting and having dramatic beats. And I wrote in my notes, I was quoting Gandalf and just said, "Fly, you fools."
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, you had kind of Spock's version of that. No time for debate.
Yeah.
Well, you also had that great line from Janet Reno where Saru tells her to get down to engineering with the time crystal, and Tilly go with her, and Reno gets in there and is like, "Get off my butt." She doesn't say butt. Sir, I mean, get off my butt, sir. As the doors close.
Another nice line, and in character for her, that's what she could do: mouth off to an acting captain without thinking about it.
Well, and I also like her line before that about, "You mean in case one of us gets dead?"
Yeah, right.
that was nice too. They do nice dialogue on this show.
So then Stamets gets injured while they're bringing the suit to the shuttle bay and has to be taken to sick bay, where he'll, of course, encounter Hugh, and there's a whole moment where Hugh is about to put him into a medical coma and talks about, and there's a reconciliation of sorts there. So that's
except there's no reciprocation. This is kind of almost, I mean, you think about it from one level, this is almost an assault. I'm putting this guy into a coma at the same time I'm telling him I'm having a romantic future with him. Maybe he doesn't consent to that anymore. He didn't last time.
Right.
You know, I will say, though, the scene where Stamets gets knocked out was kind of an effective way of showing, the damage in these ships is not just external. It's not just the hull getting blasted and the shields buckling. It's stuff inside going boom, too.
Yeah.
I think that was kind of an effective way of showing that.
This also reveals something else, which is it's not just the bridge crew that decided to stay with Michael. Apparently, everybody on the ship has decided to stay with Michael and go into the future. And I'm going, really? Hundreds of people have agreed to go forward who knows how many centuries and never see their family again?
A millennium.
This is a one-way trip?
Right.
Well, I know, but they don't necessarily know it's 950 years. But,
right.
But it really, I mean, this sounds much more like this ship is going AWOL, you're stealing Starfleet personnel, and I really can't imagine this being consensual on the part of much of the crew. So I found myself having trouble with that.
Yeah. Although we do solve the problem of how do we leave Spock behind without taking him into the future, even though he volunteered, which is that he's guides Michael to the perimeter of the battle using a shuttle, and thus very clearly from that moment on we realize he's going to somehow not be able to get back to Discovery, which turns out, of course, I mean, it's obviously he can't go. I mean, we did talk about last time the idea that if they did go back in time, then maybe he'd be with them for a while and then come back, right, and then have
they could have done that if they wanted. By the way, so we also have Poe in this episode, and she gets on the horn to Pike, and I love the first thing she says is, "First, I invoke diplomatic immunity for stealing this shuttle," and then, as because she's knows about engineering and so forth, she tells Pike that their attacks on these shuttle things from 31 is going to fail because they have a special kind of shielding, and that you have to attack the shield from two sides at once if you want to crack the shield. If you just attack one side, it'll reinforce from the other. So you got to hit it from two directions at once. And so they start doing that, and it works. I liked that because this is something new on Star Trek in terms of something we have to do to get through the enemy's defenses. Before, with the Borg, it was like they're modulating their shields. Okay, fine. That's been done. But this is something new, and I wanted to give him credit for that.
That is true. So meanwhile, Leland beams aboard while the shields were down to let Spock and burn him out.
Burn him off.
So as you said before, Jimmy, now that he's on board, how about we put up a shield around him that blocks electromagnetic radiation, and he can't communicate with all the other ships?
Mhm.
That would be a neat solution.
That would solve the battle right there.
So we don't do that. But this time, he doesn't kill everyone on the bridge like the vision that Michael was having. And
So
is
they've
this?
already-
Yeah, they've changed the future.
Yeah, they've changed. So she saw a possible future, and I think the distinction, I was thinking about this, that Captain Pike grabbed the crystal as it was still in place, and that locked him to that future.
Interesting
Burnham
headcanon.
did not at that point.
Yeah.
She did not grab it as it was original, untreated, whatever, however you want to put it, unprocessed.
In situ.
And so she saw a possible future.
Hmm.
It's an interesting way to rationalize that. That is otherwise a problem that people pointed out, but that's a nice way to headcanon it. Good.
Right, and nobody actually does touch it. We do see Spock using that little gravitational thing,
Grappler thing.
grappler thing.
Yeah.
Yep. So Leland heads into the ready room where he's going after the sphere data, which he thinks is in there, and followed by Nahan and
Giorgio.
and Giorgio. Thank you. Where they have that a little bit of a nice back and forth about him being an AI stuffed into a meat sack, and thus he's an AI sausage. And then, ew.
Even before then, Giorgio says she's moved. Well, okay, so they have to break in, and so they're working on the control to the ready room, to the door controls. And Giorgio says to Nan, after we get through this, would you like to help me make him scream? And Nan says, yum, yum. And I noticed in this episode, Nan is showing a lot of joy in battle in this. Not only does she say yum, yum to the idea of making Leland scream, when Leland says, where can I find my data? She says, so many fun ways to answer that question.
Yeah.
And the innuendo there is like, you can imagine all kinds of places that would be unpleasant to find the data. So, but Nan has really developed some spice, and particularly in combat. Also notice in the episode where they kill Arium, it's Nan who does it. And so they're really building up Nan as a kind of somewhat bloodthirsty, slightly more moral version of Giorgio.
Yeah, I mean, she's the head of security, so she's the warrior type aboard, and that you would make sense. You'd have someone who's good at this sort of thing to doing it. So we have then we jump to, no pun intended, the time suit with Giorgio. I'm sorry, Burnham. Burnham and Spock on some part of a ship.
Yeah, what are they on there? The first time I through this, I thought they landed on the hull of the Enterprise or something because it's so big.
Yeah.
But it's not. I don't know what they're on.
I thought it looked like must have been like what was left over from a Section 31 ship that got blasted.
Yeah, this is
That
my
has
best
to be.
I
guess.
could think it was.
Yeah. So she can't make the jump. It won't jump with there's probably a bug in the software that they didn't account for.
Well, that would be the real life thing. I mean, this thing is completely untested. However, they instead explain that it won't go into the future for reasons that have to do with Michael hasn't made the jumps into the past yet. She says they're in an open loop and she needs to close it to go forward. This made no sense to me. You could at any point go make those jumps. It shouldn't affect the suit's ability to go into the future now.
Well, what is the external intelligent force imposing these rules? That's my question. We keep having these sort of from a religious point of view, it's God imposing these limitations. But within the story, what is this external intelligence imposing these rules on when she can do these jumps and how she can do it? And it's just that didn't make sense.
It's quantum wibbly wobbly timey wimey plot reasons.
Yeah.
Right. So, and this is about the same time now where we have the that photon torpedo, the undetonated photon torpedo that we kept seeing in a vision, breaching the Enterprise's hull.
And the Enterprise sends out repair bots that are way too cute and look like they're from WALL-E.
But I do love the idea of repair drones.
I like the idea, but not these.
I mean, but yeah, I know they were a little too cutesy. You'd have some droids with like R2-D2. if you want to go back to the Phantom Menace, to
That
think
would
of
have been less cute than these.
Yes, but I love the idea that like we're updating our tech, as always. And yeah, you would, instead of sending human beings or sentient beings out on the hull in the middle of a battle, you would send out drones to do the work. That makes sense, and I did like that. Then we have everything seems to be going badly.
Yeah, but then the Klingon Cleave ship arrives, and then a fleet of Baul fighters arrive that are now being piloted by Kelpians.
Post-Varhai, Rawhide, Kelpians. I'm not sure how you say that, but bloodthirsty, battle-ready Kelpians are now on the thing. The Klingon Cleave ship. Did we see that last season?
I believe we did.
I think that's the one that was it the Olympus, the one that the Admiral was in the first episode, second episode. I think that's the ship that crashed into it and then decloaked.
Okay, that's because that thing is massive. That is huge. And so we have the Kelpians, and we have Saru's sister leading them into battle, and so I'm not sure. So apparently the war against the Baul has gone pretty well for the Kelpians.
Yeah, apparently so. What was this peace and harmony business? Nope, the predator species has reasserted itself.
That's right. We're back, baby. And then Spock realizes that each signal that led Discovery to something they would need to win the battle. This is the big revelation we have. Reno and the asteroid, Boreth and the time crystal, Zahia, Terralisium, which is where they need to go on the other side of the wormhole. All of these signals have been an element to the battle, and therefore, as we were just saying, in order for things to move beyond this point, we have to make those jumps first.
Right. So 2 problems other than the problem I've already mentioned, which is there's no reason you need to make these jumps right now. Problem number 1, why do they need Terralisium? The only reason Terralisium has been important in the future up to now is because it has no technology, and so Control was not messing with it in the future. But if you're about to eliminate Control, you don't need Terralisium as safe harbor on the other side. You could presumably go anywhere if Control doesn't exist in the future. Because you're about to change the timeline, how do you know 1,000 years from now Terralisium isn't safe harbor if it's not the same Terralisium you know about?
The Terralisium was important for Gabrielle's safe haven, and she's important for getting them to this battle.
They don't need to go there, though. I mean, they might want to just to find Mom, but it's not needed to win the battle. The other problem is now they're going to have the time suit jump to these different locations, which is fine. It's what it's for. But where does it get the ability to make red signals all of a sudden? I mean, they haven't talked about that at all. Mom said she didn't know anything about red signals, and that would suggest they're not part of the suit's design. But suddenly, out of nowhere, the suit gets the ability to make these bizarro, galactically seeable red signals. And even if you want to say we're going to jump to the places they're needed right now, why did you have 7 of them go off at once in the very first episode of this season? How does that relate to any of this? Michael doesn't do that.
That is the problem that I was about to bring up, which was, what were those 7 signals that all occurred at once at first, and then occurred one at a time after? Like, for one thing, presumably they didn't know where exactly these 7 signals all occurred when they all occurred at once. But yeah, that is a hole that they never closed. They never fixed that, and I don't understand how they could get away with how they think they could get away with not closing that loophole. That is a big plot hole.
I wonder if that's something that they're going to try to address next season.
They may try to address it, but I think it's sloppy writing at this point.
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree with you. I mean, the idea of, the 7th signal, where the 7th one, is the one that gets seen at the end of the episode where they're on the Enterprise. We can deal with that. That's fine. Which, by the way, that leaves an opening for them to come back at the end of season 3, in my opinion. I could see the last episode of season 3, and we'll talk about this next week, but where we end at that point.
Yeah, right. So the red bursts were as they were described as a series of temporal anomalies, unlike anything Starfleet had encountered before, that were precisely synchronized. So yeah, what were they? What sends the signal? Yeah, there's and of course we still have the seventh signal that is yet to be given. We'll get to that as we go. But so Spock asks Burnham to take a leap of faith that is logical. That's what he says. So that and so she needs to do this, even though it's a leap of faith, but there's logic behind the leap of faith. So there is faith and reason.
Yeah, funny no one's ever talked about that before in the history of human ideas.
Well, it's a mysterious world all around. So Leland, back on the Discovery, is unable to find the sphere data in the computer. Man, I know how he feels. But if you go to the time machine backup, that's usually where I find it first. But Backblaze might be where you eventually have to go and re-download it. But and we have that. We talked about that where Nan taunts him with I can talk about where you could find that sphere data. Michael then jumps through the wormhole that she creates.
Yeah. Also, Spock's shuttle. Yeah, Spock's shuttle, it gets disabled, and then she jumps through the wormhole. We have this very 2001: A Space Odyssey sequence that also looks like Spock's voyage into V'Ger from the motion picture.
Yes, it does. Very reminiscent of that. Right down to how she reacts, like the fetal position, and then we have this quick review of all the signal events. So it functions as a nice season in review moment where we get to see all of the things that led up to where we are here. Then we have this fight between Georgiou, Leland, and Nan in the Discovery corridor where the gravity is shifting. So the set is essentially a hallway that they built that rotates. It's a barrel that rotates, and so they're rather than not Frank.
It's like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers dance scenes.
Yes. Sorry. That would have been a good hit if I didn't have a brain malfunction there.
See, now, it would be interesting to know the practical of that, if it actually was just a corridor in a barrel type of thing, or if it was more CGI imposed and they just turned a camera within a.
No, that's I'm sure that's how they did it. This is a technique that Hollywood has often used, and I was thinking about, could you just do this with CGI?
Well, maybe CGI wasn't the right word, but like green screen.
That would be really hard to do it on green screen because,
because they're falling. And I was watching as the fight progresses. Like there's a moment where Georgiou leaps onto Leland and pushes him in a certain way, and I could figure out, okay, they've tilted the hull this way, and so that's why they're falling in this direction.
I mean, you could do it, but it's much cheaper and faster to do it with just a rotating barrel.
Fair enough. I mean, it's just I didn't know.
What I found interesting in this scene is that Leland is shown grimacing and showing emotion and feeling pain, and I wasn't sure about why, if he's just a computer in a meat sack, but apparently his pain nerves are still attached and produce some kind of pain response. So, and I know the reason they want that is dramatically so he can scream when they kill him, but I kind of thought it would be interesting to see him fighting totally emotionlessly, like none of this hurts him.
But they did establish a few episodes ago that the whole point for Control to merge with Leland was to get those more human responses. So I'm guessing that there's still a bunch of human, autonomic, involuntary responses in there. So that would be, so that's probably why. Then we have Cornwell and Number One are on Enterprise trying to disarm this torpedo.
Yeah, I had a couple of notes about this. One is, up to this point, Cornwell has been remarkably inactive. She is not acting in this battle like a commanding admiral. Not at all. She's leaving everything to Pike and Saru. And that did not strike me as plausible. She does begin to show some leadership as she's getting closer to her sacrifice. But even then, it's not going to be great, as we'll talk about. But so she and Number One have gone down to where this torpedo is impacted, and there's a blast door, which is going to be very implausible, but there's a blast door that has failed to descend entirely, and they can't get it to, they're trying to reprogram it to get it to descend, and apparently this is going to shield the inside of the ship if the torpedo blows. Cornwell says that the torpedo's secondary detonation sequence has started and will go off in 15 minutes. And I'm going, if the torpedo has a secondary detonation system, why isn't it immediate? And how can you tell by looking at it it's going to be 15 minutes from now?
Because it's got these really cool lights that light up in sequence as it gets closer and closer.
So I can imagine the design meeting at Starfleet Engineering thinking, okay, so we need to have these torpedoes. What if they don't go off when they impact? Well, we should have a secondary explosion just in case. Oh, okay, so it should just boom. Well, maybe we should have it wait a little bit, just a little while. Why would we do that? Because it's cool.
Yeah. I mean, one headcanon I could do with it is, this is a safety feature that if the torpedo is accidentally jostled in the ship while it's in battle, that it doesn't go off, et cetera, et cetera.
Time to kick it out
But there should still then be a reboot switch or something to say, okay, shut down system,
Yeah. There should also be an arming sequence you have to go through with this before it's even possible for the primary detonation system to become active.
So yeah, in this sacrifice. So Cornwell, there's a manual release for the door on the inside of the room as opposed to the outside. But I get that because sometimes you might be on one or the other side of the blast door. Although maybe designing it such that there are releases on both sides would probably be not a design flaw.
On the other side would be particularly handy in this case.
Well, I mean, if the torpedo was on the other side, then they could release it, come down, everybody lives. But in this case, that's unfortunately not. And so we have this moment where she has to release it. It goes down, and Pike now had come down, and he's on the other side of the door, looking through at her, and it explodes, and boom, and she dies. And it blows out like a quarter of the ship, except for that the elevator shaft, the lift.
So just before we get to this point, she and Pike are having a conversation because Pike is wanting to make the sacrifice, and she tells him, your story is not over, and I think you know that. And I'm going, how does she know this? Because she's hinting about his fated destiny. And so I didn't understand that. But then she makes this argument to him, because he essentially says, well, if I jump off this cliff, the angels will descend and keep me from dashing my foot against a stone. And she says, well, if you're wrong, all these other people are going to die. You can't take that risk. And she's not saying what she needs to say. Get out of here. That is an order. I mean, she is the most un-admiral-like admiral I have ever seen. And then she gets him out of there. She pulls the switch. The barrier comes down. It's got a big freaking piece of glass or something in the blast door. And Pike just stands there. Maybe transparent aluminum, but Pike is just standing there inches from this pane of glass just inches from this piece of light transparent technology when a photon torpedo is about to go off feet from him. Right. And somehow it blows a quarter of the saucer section away, and he doesn't get a sunburn from all the photons jostled. That thing is. Yeah, it's just no.
Maybe they should make the whole hull out of that material.
Yeah, exactly. It apparently stops photons really well.
And it didn't seem all that thick.
Yeah. Just the bad ones. You can still see the good ones.
Right.
Yeah. So that was like, no, I understand you want him there to witness her sacrifice, but this is something on the writing level you need to let go and move beyond. He should be running like crazy away from a fully solid blast door that does not have a transparent window in it. Also, they apparently it's been established they do have point-to-point transportation at this time. They could close the blast door and beam her out of there.
Yes. There was residual radiation from the photon torpedo.
Yeah.
Transporters were down.
Yes, transporters were down. I've seen this on Star Trek before. You can't get away with that. So So the sixth signal, the red signal, turns out to be the guidance for Discovery through the wormhole. So this is what Burnham says, that she's going to go through, light the red signal, and Discovery will follow her, except that doesn't actually happen, does it? On screen, does it? Does she?
Well, sort of does. I mean, she lights the red signal and they start going through, but the special effect of the wormhole is so big, they don't need Michael to guide them through this. They can just point and click and they'll be fine.
Right. It's kind of hard to miss a giant black hole over there. See, Giorgio, she fights with Leland all the way down into engineering, which is a lot of fun, and eventually gets him into the spore chamber, which she manages to magnetize, and she demagnetizes Leland. So
that actually pays off something they did a few episodes ago that we talked about, which is when the nanobots were in someone else and Spock used a magnetized floor to disable them. And we commented on, why do the nanobots have to be made of ferrous metals? This is why, so they can take down Leland in the season finale.
Right. And apparently the only place on this ship that you can magnetize the floor is in the spore chamber, as opposed to the rest of the ship.
Well, it's not a Faraday cage, but apparently it is a magnetic cage.
Yeah, well, but on the Section 31 ship, it was just on the bridge. Like they magnetized the floor. Anyway, Spock's shuttle is too damaged. Can't follow Burnham. She has to leave him. She doesn't want to lose him again. He says she taught him it was possible to be both human and Vulcan.
He says a line that I'm sure a lot of anti-Discovery fans will not like because of what it says about Spock. But she says, "You saved me. You were my balance. You always have been. I'm afraid I may not find it again without you."
Right. Yes. And then she tells him, I want you to find the person who is least like you and, connect with them. And she's obviously talking about Kirk. This is
except I'm thinking, McCoy?
Oh, right. Yeah, McCoy exactly. Is the one who's least like Spock. Kirk is the balance between the two of them.
Yeah.
So Spock will take the advice and she'll never know it, which is very tragic. And as I said before, they jibber jabber while people are dying. I only wish I could be certain of your safety. So that will be the seventh signal that she will send from the other side. And apparently one can say "I love you" in Vulcan. So he says a phrase in Vulcan that translates as "I love you." So Vulcans can love. All right, they go through, they disable, control all the drones and stuff, and they get through the other side. And that's the last.
And apparently Enterprise can lower its shields in this battle to beam Spock aboard.
Yes. Yes, they did. But they've managed to kill control, so all the ships are stopping.
And as Discovery is taking an inordinately long time to get through the wormhole, we get treated to some Star Trek the Motion Picture wormhole special effects where everyone has blurry trails. So that was kind of nice.
Yes.
Also, Pike says to Saru, "Goodbye, my friend." And then he adds, "my family." And I'm going, that's not the right thing to say at this moment, because they're not your family. The bridge crew you're standing with right now is your family. You've just been on a vacation with these other people for a while. You don't want to diss your current bridge. Oh, you're my other family. I mean,
that's my pilgrimage family, my vacation family.
Yeah.
It's the 23rd century or whatever. They can have multiple families.
Leland also, before Leland dies, he says, "This does not end here." And Giorgio says, actually, it does. But they've put the audience on notice. Leland may come back in the future.
Of course. We don't ever want to close off any possible story.
No one ever goes away.
Yeah, I was just going to quote that.
Roll it.
No one is ever really gone.
There you go.
As The Rise of the Skywalker tells us. In the future, the Golden Gate Bridge will be covered in solar panels. I just want to point that out. Instead, because they won't need cars to drive across it. But apparently solar will still be pretty big in a couple centuries.
Even though they have antimatter reactors.
Yes. Starfleet headquarters has been established previously as being at the Presidio in Star Trek. And
I've been there. Again.
Yep, I've been to the Presidio. Although before it's been apparently been transformed into a really cool neighborhood with shops but also high-tech businesses and stuff. It was, when I was there, it was just a shut down fort. So then we have this sequence of the Pike and Number One and Spock and Tyler are all lying to their superiors about the fate of Discovery. They tell them that, oh, Discovery exploded, it's gone. Tyler is made a captain in Section 31.
The commander of it.
Yes, and Starfleet is going to overhaul Section 31. This is
going underground.
Yeah, presumably the first step to the DS9 version of Section 31.
Even though they say it may need more transparency.
Yes, which means it's going to get less.
Mm-hmm.
And then Georgia was on Discovery, right? So she's not going to be
she's in the future.
She's not going to be, as far as we can tell, in the new Section 31 TV series, unless
they're filming this. So she is in the new 31 TV series. That
Right.
She's said that they're going to do Discovery season 3 and then the 31 series. And so presumably, and they've also said that this 31 series will be used to explain more about why Section 31 is so different a century from now. So apparently she's going to somehow get back in time to have conflict with Ash Tyler in the new 31 series.
Assuming they don't pull she snuck off the ship at the last second right before it went through the wormhole, et cetera, and she never actually went into the future.
They could do that, but she's indicated she's in the next season, if I'm not mistaken.
do we know for certain that Ash Tyler will be in the Section 31 series?
We don't, but otherwise, why wouldn't they put him on the ship to have romantic conflicts with Michael next season?
Yeah, I know that would be the thing. The one thing I'm thinking of is maybe, and we'll be talking about this more next week. Like we keep teasing next week's discussion. Maybe Discovery doesn't come back to this moment in time. It comes back to maybe TNG era.
Right.
Maybe. So
and maybe it's only Giorgio that comes back. It doesn't have to be the whole ship.
Right. So Spock recommends that all Starfleet members must be ordered never to speak of Discovery, its spore drive, or its crew again. Otherwise, how will the fans deal with the break in continuity? He doesn't actually save that, but it does solve the spore drive problem. But how realistic is this order? Like, what about the civilian family members? What about the civilian crew that built Discovery?
This is such a Band-Aid over a major wound in the continuity. I mean, if you're really going to take that, so all the data on the spore drive is going to be deleted from every Federation computer ever, and all the records of these people will be deleted, and no one will ever know they existed. And no, that ain't going to happen.
This is using a sledgehammer to kill a gnat. And the fact is, this is all about. I mean, the spore drive. Okay, that. So you've got it. This can't help explain the spore drive, but in terms of the and why that doesn't get used in the future, but in terms of, but that makes no sense because the spore drive is not the problem. The sphere data and control were the problem. You don't need to say we must never use the spore drive again because of those. So it really doesn't fix that, and it's unnecessary to fix the why didn't Spock ever mention his sister before. Because we never saw it. He might have talked about her all the time off screen. It just was never relevant to the stories they were telling. You know, that's they're. I think to a certain extent they have taken critical fan concerns overly seriously to where addressing them, they're going out of their way. I mean, like the whole thing about the Enterprise has had its holographic systems ripped out and will never have them reinstalled. I mean, come on, that's nonsense. We just never saw them. Big deal.
Right. Or we've changed continuity. Let's just change continuity. It's fine. I mean, deal with it. Your brain can handle that, fans. It's okay. They make an interesting choice in shooting this scene. We never see the Starfleet Admiral's face. We see I think we see his jaw or something. But I don't understand. I didn't understand what the idea was.
Well, it's similar to what they did with her trial way back, episode 3 of season 1 or episode 2 of season 1, where there's the three admirals on the panel, or the three officers anyways. You don't see their faces. You always see the back, the side. You're not even the side, but it's always from other profiles where it doesn't show this person.
It's meant to be a little Kafkaesque. You have this faceless interrogator.
It also puts the focus on Spock or Captain Pike or Number One instead of the person who's doing the interrogating.
I also like the way they intercut between the different people being interviewed as part of the investigation. And for the state your name question, Number One answers Number One.
Yes.
And for all I know, that could be her real name. I mean, I've always assumed it's not, but
I did see somewhere that actually she says her, and I didn't catch it, but someone did say she said her name. That is Una, which is Spanish for female one, feminine form of one.
Una comes from some books that gave that. And of course, yeah, it's a Swedish name, but of course in Spanish, it's the female version of.
It's in the notes on the Memory Alpha. It says that Number One finally gets a name in this episode, but like I said,
she just says it's Number One. I mean, that may be what they're referring to, that's now her official canon on-screen name.
Yeah, maybe. It's very weird.
It might be something that's in the script.
Another aspect of all this that's implausible is, as far as I can tell, lots of people on Enterprise would have known that Discovery did not explode. And getting everyone to agree, it's not just these 4 people. It's all kinds of people on Enterprise, not at least at a minimum the entire bridge crew, but probably lots more people than that knew Discovery did not explode. And getting all those people to agree to lie to Starfleet or keep quiet about this is implausible. And I thought this whole we're never going to talk about it is just unnecessary and ridiculous.
I agree. It was unnecessary. I still don't understand the purpose of that, other than fan service.
Well, and let's not forget, what about the Klingons? What about the Kelpians? They're not Federation citizens. They're not bound to treason orders.
There were other witnesses to the battle.
We have Spock ends with a personal log, which is interesting because the personal log addressed to Michael, because this season we started with a personal log by Michael addressed to an absent Spock. And he says it's been 124 days since Discovery's disappearance. And we have these, it's a voiceover for over various scenes. And one of the things we see is Enterprise repaired in a dry dock. And the dry dock is the one from the motion picture that Enterprise is in. So we have that continuity there, which I kind of had fun. We finally see Spock in his uniform. And this is obviously a symbolic choice that until now, Spock has been out of uniform with his beard and long hair, even though he's been on these ships for quite some time. But now we finally see him in his uniform. Looked better with the beard.
He did. He totally did.
To prove once again the beard.
When he goes on the bridge, everyone looks shocked because he's shaved, and it's like, yeah, definite downgrade, dude.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes, as we've established in Star Trek, when there is a beard, it's better.
All the way back to the original Spock, followed by Riker.
I have to say, by the way, the summons to the bridge when Spock is in his quarters, it didn't sound like Anson Mount, his voice. It sounded like Shatner.
James T. Kirk.
That's what I thought too.
Spock to the bridge.
Yeah, I don't know what that was, because that was I had to watch it more than once. It's like, that's James T. Kirk's voice. We're about to have a time jump, and then we didn't.
Yeah, that was a very interesting. I wasn't sure whether it was just me or you, so I thought that was a lot of fun. I think it's a little bit of a homage.
It wouldn't surprise me at all that if there's ever behind the scenes where they say they purposely picked a recording of William Shatner from the original series saying it to throw it in there. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, that might be. That might have to check out. There
doesn't make narrative sense, though.
Doesn't make narrative sense, but that's more of a wink and a nod to the fans.
So also, as part of this montage, we see Spock meeting with his parents, so we know they've been reconciled, and he says he's sworn never to speak Michael's name to anybody except his parents, so he can talk to them about it because they have diplomatic immunity from investigation, and so he can tell them everything that happened. Finally, the 7th red signal appears in the Beta Quadrant, 51,000 light years away, which is the location of Terra Elysium. So we know that's where they went. And I'm thinking, okay, so does Starfleet now want to investigate this new red signal that's just shown up?
Right, exactly. So we've noticed this. So what about it? And if they did get the red signal, is that because Michael came back in time?
Well, maybe, but you
Or
know,
maybe that's the end of season
what
3.
she said, what she said she was going to do is from the other end of the wormhole, I'll set it off and you'll see it. And then because of the wibbly wobbly, he doesn't see it till 124 days later.
And this is where I think, again, we'll talk about this next week, but this is where season 3 is going to end.
Maybe.
Yeah, perhaps. So we do spend a lot of time with Enterprise at the end of this episode, which is a lot of fun. I kind of like seeing Enterprise and imagining. And as we end, the camera flies out of the bridge bubble, just like in The Cage, the first pilot.
Reverse
for
of the
original
Cage.
series.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was actually a really nice choice there. I did like that.
I like a couple of little snippets of dialogue right before they do that, where Spock says, "Let us see what the future holds," which of course this is what next season is all about.
Wink, wink.
And then Pike says, "Hit it," which
Right.
is a nice variation on the
Engage
Captain
or
engage, make it so line.
There is that's something I was going to say. But we spent a lot of time with Enterprise. We see the bridge, we see Spock's station, we see the viewer, and even the graphics on the screen are the same graphics that we saw in the original series. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. And in the credits, over the credits, I don't know if you guys bothered to watch credits. I did for a little bit. And the theme music from the original series, Alexander Courage theme, is overlaid on the Discovery theme during the credits, which was a nice touch. I like that too. All right. So that brings us to the end. So we're as we've told you ad infinitum, we are not speculating on next season yet. We're going to have our season in review episode next week, where we're gonna look back over the whole season, how it all went, that sort of
I'm
thing.
going to speculate some.
And we'll speculate. Yeah, next time though.
Yeah.
And any other notes on this episode that we didn't cover? Anything left?
Do have a couple. First of all, it's amazing that the time suit can get battered by debris and a blast, and it's completely unharmed. Yet the shuttle gets hit.
Yeah.
Right at the beginning of that fight in that barrel room with Leland. But funny how two random crew members just happen to walk in just as a hole opens and they get sucked out, but the other guys don't.
Bad timing.
The Klingons were very Klingon in this one. I did like that.
Today is a good day to die.
Yep. One thing, when we're talking about the flashbacks, I wanted to jump in on this, but we are moving pretty quick. They made it sound like not just did Saru get to see a good view of the Angel, but got to see that it was Burnham in the suit, but never said a word about it. They kind of hinted at that.
Did they?
He said something about it was not Saru, but his sister said, "Oh, you came back and brought help."
No, that's a line from the original episode, though. I don't think the implication is there.
I thought they kind of imply. I thought there was they kind of implied there, but maybe I'm misreading it. So, anyways.
Yeah, I think maybe it was more generic, like whoever this person is help, as opposed to maybe. But that's possible. I didn't catch that. That's interesting. Okay, so let's wrap things up. Before we do, we want to take a moment, like we always do, to thank the patrons who make it possible for us to create Secrets of Star Trek and to do this discussion each week about Discovery and coming up about all the Star Trek series. And we want to thank by name this week Edward G., Billy C., Placid K., Helen O., and Michael S. Through their generous donations at sqpn.com/give. Their financial support, and let's be honest, this makes it possible. We wouldn't be doing it without it. It makes it possible for us to continue making Secrets of Star Trek and all the great shows we've been doing at StarQuest. And you can join them by going to sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What did you think of, so specifically about this part of Such Sweet Sorrow, part 2? We'll talk about, you can give us your feedback on the whole season next week. But what did you think of our discussion on this part? So let us know by going to sqpn.com/trek or our Facebook page, which is at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Leave some feedback there or send an email to trek@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time, like I said, where we discuss Discovery's Season 2. Until then, Father Corey Stika, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Glad to be here, and thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thanks, Tom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, this is Starfleet. Get her done.